The war on pork barrel spending, that is, and you have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell now yielding to Tea Party pressure, throwing his support behind the push to ban these so-called earmarks. Now, earmarks are a special funding request lawmakers slip into legislation for home state projects. Although they can be controversial, earmarks account for less than 1% of the federal budget. Many Republicans have signed on to a ban. Let's ask our next guest if he's going to as well. Senator Saxby Chambliss, he's a Republican from Georgia. So, Senator, are you going to sign on here in favor of a moratorium on earmarks?
Jenna, I have consistently voted, number one, for earmark reform, secondly, to eliminate earmarks, and I will do so again today. It's going to be an overwhelming vote, I think, in our conference. The problem is I don't think the Democrats will ever agree to it, but we'll just have to see.
Lots of our viewers have this question about this whole process. If there is a moratorium on earmarks, then what happens to the money?
Well, the money has to be spent through the appropriation process, irrespective of whether you have earmarks or not. That process starts with the budget. And when the budget comes forward from the White House to the Hill, then we have an opportunity during the budget process to express our agreement or disagreement with the specific spending items that are in that budget. And then we have the authorizing process with some of our committees. For example, I serve on the Armed Services Committee. We always have a defense authorization bill where we deal with pay raises, purchase of weapon systems, and construction on military bases, those sort of issues. Those aren't the spending issues that people are upset about. What people are upset about are the very foolish expenditures that have taken place and how flawed the process has become. So I think you're going to see a change in the way the budget process is approached, the way the authorizing process is approached, and certainly the way the appropriation process is handled as a result of this really sick feeling around the country about the abuse of the earmark process.
So we mentioned in the introduction to you that it's less than 1% of total government spending. So will this actually help? Will this actually start a new habit to change the way we spend in D.C., or do you think this is mostly symbolic?
Well, you know, Jenna, only in D.C. is $1 million very little money. The earmarks amount to about $16 billion, and that is significant in and of itself. But the fact is that we've got to reduce federal spending by trillions over the next 10 years, not billions. So earmark reform is a good step in the right direction. But we've got an awful lot of other federal spending that is going to have to be addressed. And there are going to be some folks across the country who are going to say, well, wait a minute, that's my program. But what we as responsible legislators are going to have to do is to look at all federal spending inside and outside the earmarking process. And we're going to have to make some very tough decisions. If we don't, Jenna, then our children and our grandchildren are simply going to be left with a country that's not as strong and viable as the country that we inherited, and we just can't afford to do that. So
Senator,
there are going to be some very tough decisions.
I'm going to have to wrap up in just 30 seconds. Where would you start? When you have to make those other tough decisions on spending, where would you like the government to start?
Well, it's the discretionary spending, which basically Congress determines each year, is about a third of the budget. We're going to have to look at each of those federal agencies. And I can't say today where we're going to reduce spending there. But also, Jenna, we've got to look at the mandatory side. We've got to make real reforms in Medicare and Social Security if we're ever going to get this debt under control.
Senator Chambliss, great to have you today. We appreciate having your insight and perspective, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.